After the Battle of the Sabus in 57 BC, Julius Caesar swiftly conquered the region of Belgica, selling many of the local tribes into slavery. In 54 BC, however, a poor harvest affected the region. Caesar, whose usual practice was to requisition part of the local food supply from the tribes, faced shortages. As a result, he was forced to spread his legions across a larger number of tribes to secure provisions. To the Eburones, a Belgic tribe, Caesar dispatched Quintus Titurius Sabinus and Lucius Aurunculeius Cotta, entrusting them with the command of the recently recruited 14th Legion, raised from the north of the Po River, and an additional detachment of 5 cohorts, bringing their total strength to around 9,000 men. Soon after the Roman forces established a fortified camp at Atuatuca, the Eburones, led by their chieftain Ambiorix, rebelled with the intent of expelling the Romans from their homeland. Ambiorix formed an alliance with Germanic tribes from across the Rhine and laid siege to the Roman fort with a large force numbering in the tens of thousands. During a brief truce, Ambiorix offered General Sabinus and his troops safe passage if they agreed to abandon their position and leave Eburonian territory. General Cotta, Sabinus's second-in-command, along with most of the other Roman officers, argued against this proposal, citing their orders from Caesar to hold their ground. They also distrusted Ambiorix, suspecting his offer of safety was a ruse. Despite these warnings, Sabinus, concerned that his men would soon be starved into surrender, decided to accept Ambiorix's offer. Although many of Sabinus's soldiers harbored doubts about their general's competence, his authority as the commanding officer made his decision final. The next morning, the legionaries marched out of their camp under Sabinus's leadership, abandoning their fortified position. This decision proved disastrous for the Roman force, as Ambiorix's offer was indeed a trap, leading to one of the most significant defeats of Caesar's Gallic campaigns. While passing through a forest approximately 2 miles from their camp at Atuatuca, the 14th Legion and their 5 accompanying cohorts fell into an ambush orchestrated by Ambiorix and his forces. Although a few hundred men managed to break through the attackers and return to the camp, the majority, including Generals Sabinus and Cotta, were encircled and killed in the ambush. The soldiers fought to the last man, forming an orbis, the Roman army's circular defensive formation used as a final measure in desperate situations. That night, the surviving legionaries who had made it back to the camp faced an untenable situation. With no ammunition, no food, and no realistic prospect of rescue or survival, they entered into a pact. Each man chose to take his own life rather than face capture or starvation. In both the forest and the camp, more than 8,000 Roman soldiers perished on that fateful day, marking a devastating loss for Caesar's forces. This success encouraged other tribes in the region to revolt and launch attacks against the Roman forces stationed in their territories. The legion, commanded by General Quintus Cicero, the younger brother of the famed orator Cicero, was besieged at its camp near the Sambre River by a force that eventually swelled to 60,000 men. The specific legion under Cicero's command remains unknown, but its determined resistance suggests it may have been one of the experienced Spanish legions, possibly the 7th. In contrast to General Sabinus, Cicero wisely kept his troops within the safety of their fortified camp, refusing to risk an engagement outside its defenses. Upon receiving news of the siege, Caesar immediately mobilized the 10th Legion along with 2,000 cavalry and rushed to relieve the beleaguered forces. When the Belgic tribes learned of Caesar's approach, they abandoned the siege and advanced to confront him. Despite having only around 5,000 infantry and 2,000 cavalry, Caesar, heavily outnumbered, selected a strategically advantageous location for his camp. He quickly set his men to work, constructing trenches and earthworks as the enemy advanced. Caesar, known for his constant innovation, devised a clever tactic at the camp's gates. He ordered his men to build walls of earth only a single brick's thickness. From the outside, these gates appeared as solid and impenetrable as the surrounding walls, leading the tribesmen to overlook them entirely. Since gates were typically the most heavily defended points of a Roman camp, the enemy concentrated their efforts on storming other sections of the walls, unaware of Caesar's deception. This strategic ingenuity exemplified Caesar's tactical brilliance. The tribesmen, confident in their overwhelming numbers, were eager to finish off the small Roman force that had dared to oppose them. Caesar, however, remained calm and resolute. He had chosen this battleground with precision, fully aware of the odds, and prepared his men for what was to come. The 10th Legion, veterans of many campaigns, stood ready behind the earthworks, silent but determined. Every soldier knew that Caesar's ability to turn impossible situations into victories was unmatched. Suddenly, Caesar gave the order. His flag dropped, the sound of Roman trumpets pierced the air, and what appeared to be solid walls at the camp gates crumbled outward. In an instant, chaos erupted. As the walls collapsed, Roman cavalry surged through the openings, bursting out from the hidden exits directly into the massed ranks of the enemy. The 10th Legion also joined the fray. Caught off guard, the Belgic and Germanic forces were thrown into disarray. The sheer audacity of Caesar's maneuver had an immediate and devastating impact. The Roman cavalry, well-trained and highly disciplined, charged into the confused mass with ferocity. Swords slashed through the air, and the enemy, unable to form a coherent defense, began to panic. Within moments, what had been a confident siege turned into a rout. The tribesmen, already disoriented by the surprise attack, attempted to regroup, but Caesar's cavalry kept pressing the advantage, driving into the heart of their formations. With nowhere to retreat, the Belgians and Germans were slaughtered in large numbers. Some tried to flee, but the narrow spaces between the Roman camp and the natural terrain funneled them into deadly bottlenecks, where the cavalry cut them down without mercy. As the sun began to descend, casting long shadows across the battlefield, the scattered remnants of the Belgic host were still running in a desperate attempt to escape the relentless Roman pursuit. What had started as a confident siege had turned into a humiliating defeat. By the time night fell, the enemy had been completely routed, their forces shattered and fleeing in every direction. With the enemy scattered, Caesar regrouped his forces. The 10th Legion, tired but victorious, had once again proven their mettle in the face of overwhelming odds. With the enemy driven off, Caesar and his men were now free to march towards General Quintus Cicero and his besieged legion near the Sambre River. The Romans linked up with Cicero's forces shortly after, bringing much-needed relief to the trapped legion. During the Siege of Gergovia in 52 BC, Caesar led 6 legions in an attempt to capture the town, a key stronghold of the Gallic resistance led by Vercingetorix. The 5th, 6th, 8th, 11th, and 13th legions took part in the direct assault on the town, while the 10th Legion was held in reserve. As the battle intensified, Caesar dispatched a contingent of 10,000 Aeduans, a Gallic tribe allied with Rome, to support his legionaries who were struggling against the town's defenders. However, the Roman soldiers, already under pressure from the fierce resistance, mistook the approaching Aeduans for enemy forces. This misidentification led to confusion and panic among the Roman ranks. Many of the soldiers began to fall back, and the battle situation deteriorated rapidly. The chaos caused some units to retreat in disarray. Although the historian Appian later claimed that an entire Roman legion was wiped out during this engagement, Caesar's own account, written with remarkable attention to detail, provides a more credible assessment. According to Caesar, the 8th Legion in particular suffered heavy casualties, with more than 700 Roman soldiers killed, including 46 centurions. As the Roman legions withdrew from Gergovia, the victorious Gallic tribesmen, emboldened by their success, surged after the retreating Roman forces. The sight of the disorganized Roman retreat encouraged the Gauls to press their advantage, and it seemed as if the withdrawal could turn into a rout. With the enemy pressing hard on the retreating legionaries, Caesar faced the real possibility of suffering catastrophic losses, especially after the confusion that had already caused significant casualties. However, Caesar, ever the master tactician, had anticipated such a development. Stationed on a rise, commanding a clear view of the battlefield, he had positioned the 10th Legion, his most experienced and reliable unit, in reserve. As the retreating legions faltered, Caesar quickly ordered the 10th to form up and brace for the enemy assault. The legion, well-disciplined and battle-hardened from numerous campaigns, swiftly complied, creating a solid defensive line along the high ground. The pursuing Gauls, unaware of the trap they were running into, charged headlong into the Roman formation. But as they closed the distance, they were met with fierce resistance. The 10th Legion held firm, its soldiers standing shoulder to shoulder, shields locked in a defensive formation. The advantage of the high ground made the Gallic advance even more difficult, as they were forced to fight uphill against the disciplined Romans. At the head of his legion, Caesar himself took command, rallying his troops and urging them to stand their ground. His presence on the front lines not only inspired the 10th Legion, but also galvanized the retreating soldiers from the other legions. As they saw Caesar in the thick of the battle, many of the fleeing legionaries turned and rejoined the fight, forming up alongside the 10th to create a more unified Roman front. The Gauls, confident in their momentum, continued their attack, but the Romans held their position. Caesar's tactical choice of terrain and the steadfastness of the 10th Legion began to take its toll on the advancing tribesmen. What had started as an aggressive pursuit now devolved into a bitter, uphill struggle for the Gauls. They could not break through the Roman line, and as casualties mounted, their advance began to falter. The disciplined Roman counterattack, spearheaded by the 10th, eventually forced the tribesmen to reconsider their assault. Seeing their momentum stall and facing stiff resistance, the Gauls began to pull back. The retreat of their forces was chaotic, much like their initial charge. As they withdrew back towards Gergovia, they carried with them numerous captured legionary standards, symbols of their temporary victory and spoils of the day's battle. Despite the Romans' tactical recovery, the loss of these standards was a symbolic blow to Caesar's forces, though the immediate threat had been neutralized. Thanks to the timely intervention of the 10th Legion, led personally by Caesar, the retreat of the Roman legions was turned into a strategic withdrawal rather than a rout. Though forced to abandon the assault on Gergovia, Caesar's forces had avoided complete disaster, and the bravery and discipline of the 10th Legion had once again proven decisive in turning the tide of a desperate situation. The 10th Legion played a crucial role in the Battle of Alesia in 52 BC, one of the most famous engagements in Julius Caesar's Gallic Wars. However, Caesar's detailed account of troop movements during this battle focuses primarily on the actions of his generals and specific cohorts, without explicitly identifying which of his 10 legions performed specific tasks. Despite this, it is well documented that the 10th Legion was present at the battle and played an important part in the overall Roman victory. Furthermore, the 10th Legion was notably present at the surrender ceremony of Vercingetorix, the Gallic leader, marking the decisive end of the Gallic resistance. Following the conclusion of the Gallic Wars, the 10th Legion, like many of Caesar's veteran units, remained loyal to him. With the outbreak of the Roman Civil War in 49 BC between Caesar and Pompey, the 10th Legion once again played a pivotal role.